Welcome to our first 2024 edition of Bruce Monan's Computer Points. I am Bruce Monan, your host. Joining me is our executive producer, chief researcher, usual co-host, and number one figure skating analyst, Rebekah Monan.
The title is How They Shift and Change. Usual co-host is a fun one.
Well, I have been informed by Rebekah that as we start year number 6, believe it or not, of this podcast, that as she is, unlike me, both young, single, and possessing of a social life, she may miss out on an episode or two during the coming season.
Don't forget
Hopefully not too
employed
many.
full time.
Oh, yes, and she has a job. Yeah, so, we are totally unalike.
I figured we're settled enough into the routine, even though I know there are some listeners who listen for me according to their comments to you sometimes. That the podcast can probably live without me for a week while I recalibrate and take a day to do my laundry.
By the way, I forgot to mention, Rebekah, of course, is broadcasting from the greater Cincinnati area, whereas I myself, I'm in the mighty metropolis of Minster, Ohio. I have no idea where to go from there. Oh.
We're doing this without a script this time, and I am comfortable with that. Dad is like a deer in the headlights.
It is something new for me, that is for sure. We thought we should put out a podcast here to let you all know that we will indeed be back for the 2024 season. And as soon as something newsworthy in high school football computer points happens, we will be back with our preseason podcast. There really has been nothing as of yet, Rebekah. The coaching change here or there, a conference move here or there.
Commissioner of the, well, I guess the commissioners of the MAC, not of the entire OHSAA.
Correct. The occasional conference has a new commissioner. Nothing that really affects computer points all that great just yet.
Good to know.
So
instead of doing football statistics, we can do figure skating statistics. The other circle of the Venn diagram that is this podcast.
That is correct. If you were just here for the football computer points, we just want to let you know you can leave now and not miss anything else. There will be future podcasts for you.
That's true.
However,
this one's for me.
We would like to talk about a recent adventure we had. Rebekah and I took off to Columbus, Ohio, Nationwide Arena, for 3 days of the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. And we thought it'd be fun if Rebekah took over as host and I took over as occasional fiddling in the middle.
Color commentator.
Rebekah, there we go. And before we get to you, I got one comment I have to work in, though.
You're not doing well at handing off the reins here.
Not yet. We'll get there. We met a couple Minster people. We met a couple Wapakoneta people. But sadly, whenever I tell someone I was at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, do you know what they ask me? They ask, did you see Tanya Harding?
Oh.
And no, Tanya Harding was not in the building as far as we know.
Nancy Kerrigan was there.
Yes, she was. So, Rebekah, now I hand it off.
All right. We'll see how long that lasts. So, yeah, thought we'd elucidate. No, that's not the word. You're right. Without a script, yes. This is elucidate. I learned that once in like sophomore year English and it stuck out. If you haven't been a detailed, focused listener of the pod or know me in real life, you may have missed that I am a bit of a figure skating enthusiast. It's probably my favorite sport to follow, behind football, to keep interacting with my father on a regular basis. And Dad here has been engaged in the sport from an early age of bonding with his own mother. So I had an in to get a friend to go with me to the Nationals. You may say, why would the Nationals be in Columbus? And I would say exactly the same thing. It's not the first place you think of for a center of figure skating culture, but it's pretty good, pretty well done. Managed it really well. They've got some good stadiums out there in Columbus. Nationals bounces around. They got tired of hosting it in the centers of the nation's populace of New York or Boston or LA or insert major metropolis here. Or it was cheaper, probably. I'm on a detour.
Whereas
So
I would have expected it
we
in
went.
Salt Lake City, personally, or somewhere else that has hosted the Winter Olympics, such as that little place in upstate New York, Lake Placid,
Before my
home of
time.
Miracle on Ice, which happened exactly
Home of
44
the
years
Miracle on
ago
Ice.
from the day that we are recording this. Yes,
How do you know that?
it showed up on my Twitter today.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Anyway, for those who are unfamiliar with the sport of figure skating, it works like most sports do. You do a qualifying series. You beat the people in your regionals, you beat the people in your states. That's not exactly how it happens, but eventually you get selected as one of the top ones in the country. And then they send you off to one location, or rather, they tell you you're invited and then you pay your own way to one location, and you all compete together to see who's the best in the country. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 of the best women, 18 of the best men, and I think there was like between 12 and 13 pairs and dance pairs each. So
Sounds about right. That sounds like how
roughly
many we watched.
roughly 50 of the best skaters in the country right now got out on the ice in Columbus, Ohio, and then Dad and I paid a bunch of money to go sit close to them and watch it, and it was a blast. Pro tip for anyone looking to attend in the future, not that you can game this in advance unless you've got friends also invested in figure skating. The best experience of any figure skating competition in person is to sit next to a overenthusiastic teenage girl who's got a couple obsessions. Highly recommend. Also, if her mom's there too and has a history with the sport, you get so many good tidbits. Dad and I lucked
Whereas I
out.
had to, whereas I had to sit on the aisle. I missed most of it. That's a
Yeah, I stole all the gossip. But it was very fun to get on the Jumbotron by nature of us being next to a bunch of enthusiastic children. And right behind the podium, if you get any wide shot views of the podium, I think we have one or two saved, and then you zoom very far in the backgrounds in the darkened area, you can maybe pull out Dad's UC Bearcats jacket. It's an exciting moment. We're there. We're in the podium shots.
we have proof.
We have proof. Actual event, though, is split up into 4 disciplines and 2 performances for each discipline. So there's the men's and women's singles competition. There's the pair skating competition and the ice dance competition, which is also a pair, but there are different rules. They both do a short and a long program, although for the singles, it's called your short program and your free skate. For the dance, it's your rhythm dance and your free dance. And for pairs, I think it's also short and free because we've got to make it complicated. There's a history there that I am not going to get into. My father is raising his hand to insert a comment.
We
Yes,
skipped
Dad.
the short programs and just went to the free skates, which, as Rebekah hinted earlier, it's not free to watch. It's quite expensive, actually.
No, it's not free to watch, and neither is the food or drink free to consume. Without an immediate Google, which I could do as researcher, but I'm on a roll. The free dance and free skates are because there are guidelines, or were in the past guidelines for the other dances, and the frees are just you can do whatever you want as long as you hit a time limit and a certain number of skills. Rhythm dance, they have to hit a specific rhythm and pattern. I believe in the short program originally they had to do like specific figures on the ice, but free is just a free for all. So there's some context. Okay, men's, women's, pairs, dance. So we got there, as Dad mentioned, just for the free skates, partly because it's expensive, and I didn't buy tickets for the short programs, but also because the short programs were 2 days prior, and that would have meant taking off work for 2 days that I didn't want to take off work for. So we came in Friday night. for the exciting women's final.
And it was exciting.
It sure was. Again, find yourself an enthusiastic family to sit beside. They give you all the gossip. So, came in, saw some lovely skaters. There were some pretty good programs in the initial batches. Figure skating's performed in series groups. So this one was split up into 3 groups of 6 skaters so that they could resurface the ice in between, get it nice and smooth. Nobody falls over gouges or toe pick marks. And then when they come in, they're grouped by their qualifying scores from their pre-season, well, not pre-season, but pre-nationals results. So lower qualified skaters skate first, and then the higher qualified skate last. And then by the time we got to the free program, you skate in performance order. So if you scored the lowest in the short program, you skate first, and if you scored the highest, you skate last for the drama and the tension, obviously.
Drama.
Okay, so I'm just
Well,
going to skip over group 1 because they're lovely skaters and they did much better than any of us will ever be able to, probably. But they weren't the highlight events. Although there were some very good, very well performed skates that had lower difficulty, so therefore fewer falls that were probably better to watch. But group 2, I'm going to highlight 1 or 2. Specifically, Miss Sonia Hilmer. She was, I think the first one in group 2, so middle to low end of the pack. Had an exciting skate. Couldn't tell you the music or what the skate was about because it's been 3 weeks. But she is remarkable in that she's one of the only people in the competition who can do a double jump, so 2 jumps in combination, where she spins one direction on the first one and then spins the other direction on the other one. And it's very weird to watch because you don't expect it because nobody does that. And then you have to second guess it for a bit. But for context, if you're ever watching this, probably in the Olympics, you can pay attention to figure skaters. They will only ever rotate in one direction. It's like right-handed or left-handedness. One of them, when you start out, will feel more comfortable, and you only ever spin that direction. If you start trying to go the other way, it'll really mess you up. So nobody does it.
I remember her now because it did look different.
It did. I'm an avid figure skating fan, and I will be the first one to admit I cannot tell jumps apart. I know they're jumps. I know they look cool, and I know kind of when they're done well or poorly. But if you ask me to identify one, not going to be able to do it unless it's an axle. And even that one I can only hit 50% of the time. Identifying. I cannot jump them.
I am shocked to know you can't tell a double axle from a triple toe loop. It just disappoints me.
I could do a double from a triple. Okay, other background. Figure skating jumps. You're getting a whole crash course. Buckle in. So the doubles, the figure skating jumps are named by, I think they're honestly named by whoever did them first, and then their number of spins. So single, double, triple, quad is how many times you rotate in the air before you land. The names of the jumps, some of them are actually based on how you do them, but I think there are 6 jumps that you can do in figure skating. And and they're based off of how you take off and how you land. So the variations between them are usually minute. It's usually if you take off from one side of your blade and land on the other side, like left to right, or inside to outside is the actual figure skating term. That's one jump, but if you land inside to inside or outside to outside, that's a different jump. And I'm going to change that. It's the edge you take off on, the edge you land on, how you jump, and how many rotations you do. So inside to outside, inside to inside. That's 2 different jumps. There's also jumping by just jumping, whipping your leg up in the air and going for it, and then there's jumping by digging your toe pick into the ice and pushing off. That's 2 more variations, so that gives you 4 right there. Don't question me on the math. And then there's the final bit, which is how much you rotate, which is what makes the axle special. Because all of these are just a single, you rotate once, you land. You take off going backwards, you land going backwards. Axle is a rotation and a half. So a single is 1.5, a double is 2.5, triples, 3.5, and so on, where you take off going forwards and land going backwards. So you've got to get that extra spin in there. And that's the only reason I can tell it apart from the others is because you take off differently. Yay. If you ever see people freaking out about people doing a triple axel and you're like, the guys are on quads. Why is that impressive? It's because triple axel is harder than triple everything else. And someone recently, I'll talk about him later, landed a quadruple axel, which is the first time anyone's rotated over 4 times on the ice and landed it in competition. It's scary. Anyway, where were we at?
They're
Jumps.
fast.
Oh yeah, they're so fast.
I got
But
dizzy
not,
watching.
you get dizzy doing them. That's the other thing. I'm an amateur figure skater. So amateur. I will never do jumps or spins. They terrify me. I tried once to see how the physics worked, and you don't get over the dizziness. You just get used to it until it goes away. Because unlike dance or ballet, you're spinning too fast to spot. So you're just like whipping your head around and waiting for the blur to stop. It's terrifying. Mad props to anyone who can do that. It's not me. Anyway, this is a terrifying sport, and those are highly, highly athletic people who can spin that. And that's why no one spins in multiple directions, because it takes so long to get the first spin down. And back
Now
to the
that's
women.
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny when you listen to Tara Lipinski and Johnny what's his name on broadcast.
Johnny Weir. Johnny, what's his
Johnny
name?
Weir. Johnny what's his name? Johnny Weir. I've never heard them use the term terrifying. They always use
They're
these flowery
probably
terms. Like it's beautiful and it's all this stuff.
they're paid to make the sport look interesting and appealing. They're not paid to make it realistic for first year people starting out. They don't tell you, hey, if you pull a Rebekah Monin and try and practice things that your coach hasn't taught you yet, you might accidentally break your ankle doing a backwards crossover, which is just the normal move that the professional skaters use to move across the ice quickly. It's the basic skill and it can break you. They don't tell you that. It's a scary sport. You're running around with blades on your feet. And then you get to pairs and people are standing on each other with blades on their feet. So Sonia was very good. She did a spin and then she landed and did another jump and spun the other way, and I was in shock for a while. And she's who I wanted to hit up initially. But the main event for the women's came in the third group, specifically the last. The whole group was very good, and there were very good skaters lower down who had beautiful, beautiful programs who just didn't put in a triple axel because they can't land it because it's insane and didn't get enough points to be in competition for first place. So the women's came down to 2. It was Amber Glenn and Isabel Levito. Amber came in second place. Isabel came in first from the short program. But the important context there is that Amber's been doing this for about 10 years at the senior level. So I think she's like 26. She's got experience in competitions. I wouldn't say unflappable because she does feel the pressure and tend to collapse on herself when she gets stressed out. But she's generally experienced in major competition. Isabeau came in and is very good and is, I think, technically stronger than Amber, but she's like 17, 18, and is the reigning national champion from the year before, and is not used to pressure, and is not used to coming in to the free skate in first place, having to defend. So Amber comes in, does her second to last skate of the free program. It's a beautiful piece. She lands a triple axel, which is very, very good. I think she's only like the 7th woman internationally to ever land it. Don't fact check me on that. It's in the single digits. And then starts feeling the pressure and she falls on a couple jumps. But she finishes the program and she does very well. She runs off to the side afterwards, feels like she's let herself down because she fell. So she's disappointed in herself. And we're sitting at a fun little angle where we can see the entire kiss and cry, which is the area that they show on camera when they get their scores. And also the benches just to the side of the kiss and cry where people wait afterwards. So the entire time Isabeau's going out to warm up, Amber's just on the bench, head in her hands. It's very sad. I love Amber. She's my favorite, and I am so sad for her. And then Isabeau comes out, and you're like, you just have to skate relatively clean. You don't even have to skate clean. You just have to not fall like 3 times, and you've got this. And the pressure got to her, and she fell like 3 or 4 times, and it was awful to watch. Like, I mean, it was still very beautiful and impressive. I'm rambling, and Dad needs a gap to talk.
For you football fans, it's like when you got a lead and the coach goes into the prevent defense and tells the players, just don't mess it up. And of course, they will, right?
Pressure is hard. Yeah, and she's not used to it. It's like going to the Super Bowl when you've been there 3 times versus this is your first go and all the lights are big and scary. You make mistakes you wouldn't normally. And Isabeau made mistakes she wouldn't normally. And by some twist of fate, she fell just enough times that her score wasn't good enough to overcome Amber's lead. So Amber came out as the winner and national champion, who had been crying her eyes out in a corner 5 minutes earlier because she thought she had ruined her last chance because she's getting to retirement age for professional figure skating. So it was a whole roller coaster of emotions on the sideline of the competition there. And a very exciting way to start out the weekend.
And if you haven't guessed from Rebekah's commentary, Amber Glenn was far and away the people's choice in this competition. They were all cheering for her so much, and they were all crying with her on the side. I think that's what figure skating fans like the most is all the crying. And they were just all crying
We
with
like
her.
picking favorites and following the emotional journeys. Yes.
They weren't rooting for the other girl to fall, but they weren't overly disappointed by it either.
Yeah, you don't like saying that you're happy someone had a bad skate, but yeah, the crowd had a favorite. That's for sure. And that's partly because Amber's been coming to nationals for 10 years. So all of the dedicated fans have seen her get second, third, ninth, fourth for 10 years. And this was her first national championship, and it was very emotional. Anyway, takeaway, amazing experience. Not the way you want the national championships to end. You want to feel good about everybody. But that's the nature of the beast. Pressure gets high and the falls start to come in. Do you have any other takeaways from the women's event we should hit upon?
The only thing I'd say is this comes to a little side thing that I noticed from there. When I used to watch this on Wide World of Sports back with Mom back in the old days, people would always throw flowers onto the ice. And they don't do that anymore because I hear it messes up the Zambonis.
It sure does.
So now they throw stuffed animals on the ice instead.
They call them
And
tossies
the Aussies, I like that. The
because
part
they're
that amazed
stuffed
me
animals you
was,
toss.
yeah, the part that amazed me was they didn't sell them there. Where are the capitalists in the world? Why is that a big stand full of stuffed animals there for you to sell to the crowd? And then instead of letting the skaters keep them, why don't they round them all up when they get thrown on the ice and send them back to the booth and sell them again? I was really disappointed in that.
The missed business opportunities, the losses. They have to bring in a whole volunteer staff of local figure skaters to come pick up the stuffed animals, and they don't even get anything for it.
Oh, they all got interviewed when they got it up on the big screen, so that was kind of fun.
They did all get interviewed. They get to see their favorite skaters up close and personal.
Yep, they do.
But yeah, another perk to going in person, you get to see the gauntlet of tossies. You get to try and figure out the best timing of when to throw your stuffed animal so that the skater you want picks it up and it doesn't get swept up by the volunteer skaters. I think highlight
So
of the weekend might have been when the girl sitting next to us had a giant pink flamingo, and it ended up sitting in the kiss and cry on camera.
We were so proud.
We were very proud. We were also sat right behind a cameraman. And the other highlight was whenever people's throws fell short and it hit the camera or the man in the head.
I
Again, not what
particularly
you
enjoyed
want,
that
but
part.
it is entertaining.
Well, that's what I was rooting for. So that was Friday night.
That was Friday
Who'd
night.
we
We got there like,
who'd we no who'd we start with Saturday? Was it the pairs or was it the ice dancers?
all right, Saturday was the pairs day. So it was free dance and free pairs, in which two people form a team and do various dancing things or skating things. So we're going to talk about ice dance first.
You say, to be honest, we really only have to talk about one pair in the ice dance.
Yeah, I'm not planning on spending a ton of time on pairs or
Yes.
dance. To be fully blatantly clear, I don't understand the scoring system, so it's hard to engage unless they've got a very good program with good music. But ice dance is historically based in like ballroom dance on the ice. So old time, like 50s and 60s ice dance competition was like they would give a dance routine that's based on a waltz or a tango, and you have to do that with your partner, and you have to be in contact the whole time. But the part that draws me and why I'm doing contradiction to what I just said, I am pursuing actively ice dance as a skill on in my amateur figure skating lessons, and it's the one I understand the least. So, fun fact. But why I'm pursuing it as a skill is because ice dance does not have any major spins or jumps. You don't do any of that. You stay on the ice, and if you spin, it's just a couple twizzles and then you move on, which is just instead of spinning in one spot, a twizzle is kind of like a drawn out line of spins and it's slower. So less intimidating.
That's not the licorice I kept buying and eating in the stands during
No,
the competition.
no,
It's a
that
little
would be
different.
Twizzlers, except you bought red vines.
Oh, that is right. I had red vines. Yeah.
Ice dance now, in the rhythm dance, they do get a specific pattern and rhythm they have to incorporate. And there's usually a theme that's mandated. But again, we were there for the free, so they could do anything they wanted, as weird as they wanted. And most people were pretty calm. The main pair that everyone who knows anything about ice dance knows is Madison Chalk and Evan Bates. They came in as the favorites. Everyone else was entertaining, but there wasn't much of a following for the others. Chalk and Bates are the pair at the moment. Sorry, the dance couple at the moment. I think they're like world champions also. So, and
I think you're
they've
right.
had that title for a while. So they came in. Everyone did very well. It was all very cool to watch. The drama of the dance competition is that there was rumors that Chalk and Bates were not going to skate because one of them had the flu earlier in the week. And then the other one had the flu the day before and was still having symptoms. And the word on the street was they were going to go through warm up, and if they felt bad, they were going to drop out. So the whole time we were all waiting to see if they were actually going to skate. And they did. And the fun of Chalk and Bates is that they do really weird programs. That's their signature.
If you're an old person, they're basically the Orville and Dean from the 80s and 90s of nowadays. So you have to be old to know Orville and Dean, though. British people did lots of weird stuff, won all the time.
Yeah, I think the judges like it when they get a little weird. Probably more component points for like interpretation of music or something. So like for context in history, they've done Snake Charmer and Snake as a routine. They've done Robot falling in love with space alien explorer
Ooh,
thing.
I have not seen that one. Yeah.
It's very cool, but they go kind of out there with their themes. This time I think was also robots. I was honestly a little too concerned with seeing how they were going to do while they were skating sick to pay attention to what their theme was. It was kind of weird, and they started out. The only thing I remember honestly about the program is that they started out in a full plank. Madison was planking and letting fully supported on Evan's knees, and you're like, okay, Evan's just gonna hold her up, and then he was like, nah, I'm gonna plank also. So it was just they were both fully parallel to the ice, being held up by Evan's knees, and it was impressive and intimidating. And they skated pretty well. I mean, not on obviously not as the best that they've ever done. And you could tell on Evan's face he was not comfortable because he was probably still sick. And they were avoiding everyone off stage, giving out elbow bumps instead of hugs. But yeah, they pulled out the victory, blew the competition away. Unsurprisingly, only won by 5 points. But they had a good lead going in and were again not feeling well.
Just watching it, I was watching the gentleman, that would be Bates, right?
Hmm.
And I thought halfway through he was going to quit. He did some move and he just kind of dropped his arms like he was done. And then you could just see him. He just took a deep breath and took off again and went and finished the thing. And I told Rebekah it reminded me there was an old Happy Days episode where the Fonz was in a dance contest with some girl. I think it was Richie Cunningham's sister. But anyway, he didn't do any moving. The Fonz just stood there while the girl danced around. And that's how the second half of this ice dance was. This guy wasn't doing a lot, but the lady was carrying the show, and she was good.
They're very good. You see it on TV and you're like, yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then you see it in person and you're like, oh no, they're really whipping around each other there. It's more impressive in person. But yeah, that was the free dance. And then they kicked us out of the stadium for a whole 2 hours so we could scan our tickets and go back in for the pair skate later in the evening. It was cold. It was kind of cold. This was
Outside.
in late January.
Yeah. And
Hmm?
rainy.
And rainy. Yeah. And we didn't walk very far away, so the bar we were in was very crowded.
Soccer. I found a bar.
I mean, in the Arena District in Columbus, Ohio, it's not hard to find a bar. It's almost harder to find anything else. So pairs was next. Pairs is, for those unfamiliar, it's basically single skating but together, synchronized, with some throw jumps as well. So you do a lot of side-by-side jumps, which are scored both on the quality of the jump that the worst person in the group did. So if you're supposed to do two triples and one of your pairs jumps only a double, you get scored for a double. So they do work pretty hard to be synchronized and make sure they're consistent. They also have, I mean, I guess they kind of have twizzles also, which are those long extended spins. And then they have throw jumps where the usually male partner will take their smaller partner, lift her up, and then just toss her. And she'll do it like a triple spin in the air and then hopefully land well and cleanly, and it's very impressive. My favorite move. This one is not usually highlighted in the rundown of most impressive moves because it's not a jump or spin, called a death spiral, which is
Oh,
dramatic
yes.
enough on its own. It's my favorite move to watch in all of figure skating and is, again, terrifying. If the name Death Spiral didn't tell you that. Basically, every pair did it in competition, and I had a lot of fun critiquing how well they each did it. But essentially, the male lead partner plants his toe pick in one spot on the ice and spins the partner around while she like stretches her body and her limbs so that if essentially they get into a position where she's only held off the ice by him holding her hand and like whipping around enough that her body doesn't touch the ice. And her head gets inches, less than inches from the ice, and they're spinning around, usually not slow. And it's so cool to watch. And I worry so much about their safety in practice. They must have gotten so many bruises and almost concussions learning how to do that. But yeah, just man sitting as a pivot Woman fully parallel to the ice, spinning around him.
Rebecca,
Mhm.
do you suppose in practice perhaps the woman wears a helmet or headgear of some sort?
I would hope so. I would really hope so. I would really, really hope so. And I've never seen someone at my rink break out a helmet. I've seen people break out butt pads, but I've never seen them break out helmets. Grain of salt is that no one at my rink is a pair skater. Well, that's not true. No one at my rink is a pair skater who does death spirals.
There you go.
There's a couple siblings who are like, I think they're like 10 or 12, who are coming up in the circuits, and they're doing pair skating together. They're also doing individual skatings, and I don't think they're going to be a pair for very long because they're 10 and 12-year-old siblings and they hate each other. But they're very good at skating. Anyway, the pairs event, to be honest, I also didn't know anyone going in or have an emotional attachment, so it was very good for getting new favorites. But also, I'd only heard of one of the pairs before, and that was Ellie Cam and Danny O'Shea. They did very well. I don't have much more to say because, again, I'm not entirely sure how the scoring system works. But everyone was very cool to watch, and I had a blast. One other remarkable note there, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the culture of pairs, there's usually an age gap. It's usually, I wouldn't say usually significant, but it's common for it to be a pretty significant age gap. And that's largely because it's hard to find compatible partners. And there's a limited number of men who are doing pair skating. So the men who do it tend to stay in it for a long time. And the women who do it probably could stay in it for a long time, but they don't have to. And if they can't find a partner, they'll probably switch back to singles. So, as an example, the winning pair was, I believe, the woman was 21 or 22, and the man was 35. So, not
And he looked every bit of
uncommon.
35 too.
He did.
He was
Very,
he
very
was he
tall,
looked
very
like
bald.
he looked like he was a man among children on the podium up there.
Yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable. I won't lie about that, but not uncommon. But yeah, moving on to the hot ticket event for all of US nationals, the men's free skate. Just had a bit of a revolution in the past decade or so, because I believe, Dad, didn't you tell me that when you were coming up, you thought women's was the big ticket event for skating?
No, far and away. Far and away. It's always the women's. They were known as the queens of the ice. The guys were never kings.
Traditionally, the women's skating has been the more popular ticket because the men's didn't have a ton of hype around it. The culture was not there to support it. I would assume they probably didn't have as many coming up through the programs to engage the interest in.
I think part of it may be that figure skating seems to have moved a little more. It used to be more of a mostly beauty and some athleticism that's moved more to lots of athleticism and some beauty. And I
I would
think
agree
that
with that.
change has helped the men's gain a little more
Yeah. There's
prominence.
definitely been a push away from the pageantry and towards the physical accomplishments. And personal opinion, I think a lot of that came around within like the last 10 or 15 years, but specifically in the US culture with one Mr. Nathan Chen. So we were doing pretty okay with women's competitors, but we didn't have too many standout men. Like there was your Brian Boitano, your Scott Hamilton, your Adam Rippon, your Johnny Weir, who all had their own moments, but they weren't dominant. And everyone likes their representative to be dominant. It's a lot more fun to cheer for. And so, I don't know. When Nathan Chen came on the scene in senior figure skating, he was physically more capable about doing the technical jumps than most other men's figure skaters. And by the transitive property, most, if not all, women's figure skaters. So he was doing jumps that I'm not going to say no one's done before, but he was doing like the quad jumps, the hardest ones, all the time. He could do so many. So he would just blow away the competition by sheer number of points. And he stayed at the top of the leaderboard internationally the whole time. So he started his senior career in 2016 and just retired last year. So a good 6 years, 7 years, came onto the scene and pretty much instantly became dominant and was, I believe, between two Olympics, undefeated in every competition he was ever in.
Sounds
So
right. Yeah.
that did a lot for stirring up public opinion for figure skating, and it definitely propelled the men's competition to the hot ticket item. Again, Nathan did retire last year at the ripe old age of 24. And at the same time, we got a new dominant men's figure skater in one Ilya Malinin, who is brand new to the senior scene. I think he's 17. He came up from juniors last year and is the first person ever to land a quadruple axel in competition. You remember, right? That's the 4.5 spins in the air. And it's impressive to see in person. So fast and so high to get all those in. But yeah, suddenly you've got someone who can do, again, all those quads, which get you an uber amount of points, and then the extra quad axle, and suddenly no one else can keep up with him, and we've got another world champion in the works. There's our history. This specific event had a couple highlights for me outside of Ilya Malinin, our far and away champion of points.
Once again, we had a crowd
I
favorite, and
don't
it
know
was
if
not.
it's yeah, well, you would
We had two
think
crowd favorites
the
at
crowd
best.
split
Yeah.
on this one. There are two crowd favorites in the men's. We're spoiled for choice in the US men's bench on the bench. We've got a deep bench. For some reason, there's been more of the men in the US competition recently who have done well internationally. So I've got more emotional connection. So I was very invested in the men's competition. So just quick shout outs over here to Yaroslav Paniot. He ended up in like 7th, but he was a favorite of the small girls next to us, and he had a very, very good program. Very fun to watch. I think
We
he
gave him two
skated,
thumbs up.
I think he was doing the Queen program. It was very, very good for
Oh
crowd
yeah, yeah, doing the
crowd
Freddie
work.
Mercury thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pro tip, if you want to get the crowd on your side, play 80s rock music. Do not
absolutely.
play Phantom of the Opera or the
No,
Moulin Rouge.
no.
They've been done. Everyone plays them. Just let them die. Anyway, so Yaroslav, Jimmy Ma, Andrew Torgachev, Maxim Naumov, they all did fantastic programs. The crowd favorites were Ilya for his cool jumps, and he does a thing called, I think it's a raspberry twist. It's a weird, jumpy, spinny thing. It's very cool to watch, but it doesn't seem like it should work. Look it
I
up if you
don't.
got time.
I don't know how you describe it, but you watch it, you go, ooh, and then like, how do you do that? What was that exactly?
It was like a
It looks like he's
side
gonna
flip.
fall. Like he
Yeah,
messed up and he's gonna fall, but then he doesn't. So
it's definitely a jump and it's definitely a twist, but it's not like a vertical one where you spin across the vertical axis. It's like he launches himself sideways and then also does like a front rotation and then I don't know. It's weird and I don't know how it works, but it was cool. But anyway, the other fan favorite and my personal favorite skater of all time, I've got a bit of a weak spot. Jason Brown, who has also been in the game for a long time in the figure skating world, probably 10-ish years in the seniors. And he can last a lot longer because he's 29, which is old for a national competition level skater. But he can last because he's not good at jumps, which normally would be bad. But he's very good at everything else. Everything else.
in other
And he
words,
can get good enough at jumps that he can keep up.
he's like a running back that knows how not to take hits. His body's gonna last longer, but maybe he doesn't get He can't do the big jumps for the big points, but he also doesn't hurt his body trying to do the big jumps.
Correct. So this man is just, you don't understand that it's an art form until you watch him skate, and you're like, oh yeah, that's how this was before everyone was insane about jumps. You're like,
Yeah,
this is,
there
I mean, it's so good.
yeah, there are a couple of them that don't do much except go from one corner of the arena to the other and do a jump. And then after they land it, they skate to another corner and do a jump, and then they skate to another corner and do a jump, and that's all they're doing. And then you see this guy and you say, well, there can be more to it than just that.
Mm-hmm. There are some people who, when they do spin, they're just, they're just getting the spin in and moving on, and they're turning so slow because they're not good at spins. And you're just like, I don't know
Or
if this
some
counts anymore. You're basically stopped. And then Jason comes in and does a spin, and it's like the most flexible operatic ballet move, and he's spinning so fast. And you're like, yes, this is what I wanted all those spins to be.
there were a lot of
He's
bad
just,
slow spins.
there are a lot of bad slow spins, but you've got to do it, and they don't have the speed. Anyway, Jason's my favorite. He's very good to watch, and he's very nice off the ice, like just the happiest, most smilingest interviewee you'll ever see. Like he's bubbly. He is bubbly. Anyway, I gotta see Jason. It was all I wanted. It was half the reason I bought the tickets. That's all the events. Except there's one more
Oh
secret
yeah.
event. They don't tell you about it. That's a lie. They do. It just doesn't win any medals. The exhibition skate. Or, in our case, the Prevagen Skating Spectacular.
Got to get a good advertiser in there for this for the exhibition skate. They actually had to
Basically,
change the signs. All they changed signs all over the arena between the end of the men's and the start of the exhibition skate for the new sponsor. It was fun to watch.
they did. It was very entertaining. My conspiracy theory is that this started because the skaters had extra time and were goofing around, and I'm guessing the competition organizers rented the rink for the whole day, and the final competition ends at like 2 p.m. and they said, hey, we can make more money by selling tickets to this thing they're doing anyway. But what the exhibition skate is they take the top competitors, usually first, second, and third from each of the competitions, and any other additional fan favorites, and occasionally a couple of the favorites or winners from the junior competition. And they say, hey, if you've got anything else, now's the time to break it out. And they just skate their fun program that they probably do whenever they're tired of practicing their serious one.
For you old timers, once again, this is when Scott Hamilton would do that illegal backflip that he's not allowed to do in competition.
Very much so. If you ever want to see a backflip, they'll do it at exhibition skates because there are no rules and no judges. So you get the backflips, you get side flips, you get people interacting with the crowd or jumping on the ice from the crowd. I've seen that before. Or bringing out props, intricate costume changes. The music that their coaches said was not appropriate for international competition. Whatever they want. It's where you get to see the skaters have fun and not be stressed out. And it's just a fun time. And
Mm-hmm.
then they all get together at the very end and they do a big synchronized skating thing that was probably coordinated in 10 minutes. It's just a ball of joy. I would clap for those people all day long. Except not for that. We left early because I wanted to go to bed. Because it was like 11 p.m. And apparently that's my bedtime.
Yep. All you people who get up early in the morning to go to work always wear out at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, Dad would come back after we got back at 11. I would go instantly to bed, and he would be up and doing things until like 2 in the morning,
Maybe looking up high
playing
school football
Splendor
gossip.
online.
Yeah, that too. Little splendor. Yep.
High school football gossip. Hard at work prepping for a new season of the podcast.
All year long.
Anyway, that's about all I have for this. Oh, one other thought from the exhibition skate. Jason's, of course, Jason Brown, my favorite skater. His remarkable skate that he brought out was not a goofy costume change or a forbidden move. No, he decided I'm gonna bring a live orchestra from the Columbus Symphony Orchestra and play my music live. We're just gonna do that. Why not? So that was fun. And they gave him an award, partly related to that. But from what I understood, it was kind of just like an insider's award of like, hey, this guy thought you were cool. Here, have this award I'm just going to give you at my house. And then 30 years later, that guy gave it to someone else. And then 10 years later, that guy gave it to someone else. And then they're like, maybe we should make this public.
Ooh,
Maybe we should give ourselves
I
credit
could,
for this.
I could give you some details on that. I remember the story.
Please do.
It started with way back when, like 100 and some years ago, there was a skater whose last name was
Mr.
Lutz.
Salcow.
Oh, Salchow. Sorry, I
I
was
thought it
thinking
was
of
Salcow.
Mr. Salchow.
Oh.
Yes. And that's what one of the jumps is now named after Mr. Salchow, which I was happy to learn that because I always kind of thought that was a weird name for a jump. And anyway, he had a lot of awards. And at some competition, some new guy,
Button?
Dick Button, it was Dick Button, skated really well but didn't win. And Mr. Salchow thought the judges kind of cheated him, so he told him, "Come on over to the house and I'll give you a trophy because I have gobs of them." So Mr. Salchow gave Mr. Button this trophy, so he had a trophy from the event. And like 30 or 40 years later, they both gave it to some other guy who I'd never heard of.
Misha Petkovich,
Really? Hmm. I really haven't heard
apparently.
of him. Anyway, and now I don't know if he gave it to
And
someone
to
else
Paul
eventually.
Wiley.
Yeah, I heard of Paul Wiley. I was never that impressed with Paul Wiley in his skating career, but that's just me. And they now decided that they're going to make it into the Heisman Trophy of skating and give it out like every 4 years or something.
Hmm.
So it seemed a little self-pretentious, but what the heck? You got to start these things somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of trophies kind of are.
Yeah, they are. and I,
Yeah,
and they
it's
gave it
kind of
to
sweet.
Jason Brown because everyone likes him and because he skated a lot on on the internet during COVID for people to watch, is what they
Yeah,
said, right?
I think they set it out. I do kind of think they brought it public just to give Jason a trophy because they
Yes.
like Jason. And then they thought up reasons why he deserved one afterwards. Um, but the actual stated reasons and continued qualifiers for the trophy are that they're excellence in skating, obviously, with a preference specifically for never having won gold, won first place in major competition, which Jason never did because that Nathan Chen guy, and now that Ilya guy. Also, someone who is a above and beyond the rules of competition, not in a break the rules, but like they actually skate like they like to, and who is a good influence on the skating world as a whole. So Jason's one of the best publicity men for figure skating out there. Nathan Chen's good for the big names, but he doesn't like talking to people, and he's not the best at sharing enthusiasm. Jason is all about enthusiasm, and he loves talking to people.
So a
So
good
yeah, he kept up
ambassador for the
skating,
sport, huh?
a very good ambassador for the sport. So yeah, he did a lot of marketing during the pandemic. He's very vocal about charity works. He donates all his stuffed animals to local Ronald McDonald houses, which I don't know why everyone
True.
doesn't, because that's a lot of stuffed animals to manage.
There's a lot of
Um,
stuffed animals.
he should probably donate them somewhere or sell them to be resold. But generally,
Which,
he's
as you
just
might
a
guess, is just
really,
what I would do.
he's just a really good guy. So in 4 years, they'll give it to someone else who's good at skating and hopefully a good person and a good ambassador for the sport. But I think this was primarily to make Jason cry, which worked, and give him a good send off for his career.
That about sums it up. Do you have any specific
Right now,
takeaways from the experience, Rebecca?
yeah, I'll be going again if it's close by. I probably won't travel super far. Although the World Championships is in Boston next year, so I'm probably going to go to that. No major takeaways. I enjoyed it all. One learning I had is that they don't show you the little box with the scores and how well the skaters do live that you see on TV. That doesn't exist in the stadium, so pros and cons. I like it as a mathematical person, so I can easily critique how well they're doing without knowing what they're skating. But there was something really cool and engaging about being there in person and not having that box distracting me. It was really good. I loved it a lot. I like the sport a
So,
lot.
yes, you do. Just a random notice from my end. I found it amazing how many American skaters these days have parents who were Russian or Ukrainian or something like that, that were skaters for these
Yeah,
Eastern European countries. And then they've moved to the US at some time and now their kids are skating for the US. We steal the best, baby. Go
we
USA.
steal
Right?
the best. Yeah, the skating field is full of a lot of Eastern European and Asian names, partly because we get skaters from like Ukraine and Russia moving over when they get finished with their careers and raising their children here. Like Ilya Malinin is the child of two, I think, Ukrainian Olympic medalists or competitors and has been skating probably since he could walk. And I think the large Asian population of skaters comes from back in the day, our why am I forgetting her name? She's the ambassador now to
Christy
some country.
Yamaguchi? Was it Christy Yamaguchi
Christy
or
Yamaguchi back in the day had a good string of championships.
we got the wrong one. That was Michelle Kwan, who's the ambassador to Belize.
Okay. Yes. Michelle Kwan. Back it up. Back it up. Back it up. Anyway, Christy Yamaguchi too, though. Christy Yamaguchi and Michelle Kwan. We had a good like decade in the 90s where we had some pretty dominant women skaters who were also Asian American. And that stirred up a lot of potential opportunities for young Asian Americans who didn't have other like icons in public social media and culture
Mm-hmm.
to look up to. So
Always
you
good to have
see
someone to look up to as a
representation,
kid.
it opens doors. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, yes. Great event. I love the sport. I'll be going again. Thanks for letting me ramble. I can do more.
Now I know what it's like to be on your end of one of these podcasts, Rebecca.
Except I think I talked faster and left less room for you than you do for
It's
me. So thanks all again for listening to me. I'll be dropping in more comments on the figure skating season next year during football season, because that's when figure skating starts back up again. But until then, football season starts. We'll probably have news in early to mid-summer
I would think
when the
so.
practicing is allowed to start up again. Maybe we'll get some. Are there any new division splits that you think are going to happen? Or movement
Well, I
in the regions?
we'll see. Well, there's some pretty soon the enrollment numbers will come out. We won't get the competitive balance adjustments until right before the season. We'll get an idea on what the new divisions will be and something to keep an eye on. The schools are voting on a proposition this year for other sports such as basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, that Division One and Division Two would both be limited to just 64 teams, and then they're increasing the number of divisions in all those sports. You
Hmm.
would think, you would think if it happens in other sports, it's going to happen in football after.
You would
Not
think.
next year yet. Yeah, not next year yet, but look for it down the road.
So keep your ears out for a midsummer podcast. But until then, I'm sure you can keep up with Dad by following him on Twitter at Bruce Monin, or sending us any questions at the same spot, or emailing at bdmonin@nktelco.net. Of course, you're always welcome to spot him at his Wednesday afternoon office hours at Bud's in Minster, probably around 4 p.m.
Always a good time.
You won't be able to find me unless you're in my house or at my friend's house or at my work, so please don't. But you're welcome to ask Dad about me. He knows moderately what I do. But until our next episode, be sure to Subscribe on all of your major podcast sources except for Spotify. I don't think we figured that one out yet.
I can't figure it out.
They ask us to put in an RSS feed, and we haven't figured that out yet.
No, we haven't. But anyway, so if you know how to do that, let us know. And as we sign off, we want to just throw in our thanks to our technical advisor, Ms. Deb Monin, who fixed the video feed for us before we went on the air. Thanks a lot, Deb. And we will see you we will be talking to you in a couple of months here on Bruce Monin's Computer Points. So long, everyone.
If they can't see me wave.